I was standing in the living room with my bags packed, my mother-in-law smirking from the doorway. "You're a guest here, and your time is up," she said, arms folded like she had just won something. "A guest? In the apartment I paid $4,800 a month for." I gripped the handle of my suitcase, not because I planned to leave, but because I needed something to stop my hands from shaking. She looked so satisfied, like she had been waiting for this moment since the day she stepped through my door. "I married Ethan 3 years ago. He's in his early 30s, handsome, charming, and very good at pretending problems don't exist. When his mom, Linda, got divorced, he suggested she stay with us for a little while. I didn't love the idea, but I said yes. She had nowhere else to go, and I thought it would be temporary. From day one, she treated the place like it was hers. At first, it was small things, moving the throw pillows, switching my favorite coffee mugs to the top shelf where I couldn't reach them. Then it escalated. She rearranged the living room, claiming the old setup was awkward. She changed my kitchen completely, labeling drawers and cabinets like she was organizing her own home. She invited her friends over without asking, hosting tea parties in the dining room while I worked in the bedroom to avoid them. Ethan brushed it off. "She's just settling in," he'd say, never once reminding her whose home she was in. And I stayed quiet. I let her believe Ethan was the one paying the rent. It seemed easier than starting a fight neither of them wanted to have. But Linda took my silence as permission. She started making rules. No cooking after 8 p.m. because it smelled up the place. No watching TV in the living room after she'd gone to bed. No shoes in the hallway because they made the place look messy. She even once told me she didn't like how much water I used in the shower, like she was the landlord monitoring utility bills. I thought maybe she'd eventually move out, but instead she settled deeper, like roots growing into concrete. The last straw came that afternoon. I had just come back from running errands, and my things, my jacket, my laptop bag, my shoes, were all lined up neatly next to a suitcase in the hallway. My suitcase. Linda was standing by the door, lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I've spoken to Ethan," she said. "We both agree you should leave. It's better for everyone." I stared at her. "Better for who?" "For Ethan, for me, and honestly for you," she said in a voice so fake sweet it made my teeth ache. "You'll be more comfortable somewhere else. You're just not fitting in here." I wanted to laugh. This woman was kicking me out of my own apartment, the one I had signed the lease for, the one I paid for every single month without her knowing. I didn't laugh. I didn't shout. I just nodded slowly, my mind already racing ahead. "All right," I said, picking up my suitcase handle. "If that's how it is." Her smile widened. She thought she'd won, but she had no idea. Not yet. That moment, her smirk, her confidence, would be the last time she ever felt in control of anything that belonged to me. 6 months before that day, Ethan came home with an idea he thought was perfectly reasonable. He told me his mom had been struggling since the divorce and needed a place to stay, just until she got back on her feet. I hesitated. Having someone else in our space wasn't something I wanted, but I didn't want to look heartless either. I asked how long he thought she'd need. He said a couple of months at most. I told him fine, but only if it was temporary. When Linda moved in, she acted polite at first. She cooked dinner a few times, claiming she just wanted to help out. She made comments about my work schedule, little remarks like, "You must be tired from sitting at a computer all day," or, "I'd go crazy if I didn't do something real with my hands." I tried to take them as jokes, but they always carried a sting. It didn't take long for her comments to get sharper. She'd watch me make coffee and say, "Too much sugar isn't good for you." If I ordered takeout, she'd raise her eyebrows and ask, "Couldn't you have made something healthier at home?" It was never loud or angry, just steady drops of criticism, like water dripping on stone. I thought maybe Ethan would notice, but whenever I brought it up, he brushed it aside. "She's just trying to connect," he'd say. "She means well. Just be patient." It became his answer for everything. The part that bothered me most was what he didn't say. He never told her that this was my apartment, that the rent came out of my account every month, that she was a guest here. He let her believe he was the one providing the roof over our heads. I could see it in the way she talked to him, the way she'd casually refer to his place when speaking to friends on the phone. It would have taken him one sentence to set the record straight, but he never did, and I started to realize maybe he didn't want to. It didn't take long before Linda stopped acting like a guest and started acting like she ran the place. One night, she told me she didn't like people coming and going late and said I should be home by 9. I laughed at first, thinking she was joking, but she was serious. She said it was her rule. Soon after, I came home to find my clothes moved from my closet into the smaller guest room wardrobe. She said she needed more space for her thing. She even went into my drawers, rearranging them because, in her words, I didn't know how to organize properly. The final push came when I found my work desk missing from the corner of the living room. I worked from home, and that spot was the only place with the right light. She had moved my desk into the cold, windowless storage room, replacing it with a little tea table she thought looked more welcoming. I had to carry my computer and files into the storage space like some kind of unwanted guest in my own home. Whenever she did these things, she made sure Ethan was nearby, almost as if she wanted him to see her taking charge. She'd say things like, "Oh, I just moved her things to make it more comfortable for all of us," as if she was doing me a favor. When I looked to Ethan for support, he'd shrug and say, "It's just her way. Don't take it so seriously." That answer became his shield. He never once told her to stop or that she was crossing a line. I started writing everything down in a small notebook I kept hidden in my nightstand. Every rule she made, every time she moved my things, every comment she threw at me when Ethan wasn't looking. It was the only way I could keep myself from screaming. Through it all, she still had no idea I was the one paying the rent. Every month, $4,800 left my account, and she continued to strut around as though this was her domain. She truly believed she had all the power. And for a while, I let her believe it. One Saturday afternoon, I invited my best friend over. We hadn't seen each other in months, and I wanted a quiet day of coffee, snacks, and catching up. She arrived with a smile and a bag of pastries, and we headed straight to the kitchen. We had barely sat down when Linda appeared in the doorway. Her voice was sharp and loud enough for the whole apartment to hear. "Guests need to ask me for permission before they come over." I froze. My friend looked at me, confused. I tried to keep my voice calm as I asked, "Excuse me? Why would she need your permission?" "Because this is my home," Linda said, crossing her arms. "I decide who comes and goes." My friend's eyebrows shot up. I could feel heat rising in my face. "Your home?" I said slowly. She didn't even blink. "Yes. And you're lucky Ethan lets you live here at all." That hit harder than I expected. Lucky. I was paying every cent of the rent, and she thought I should be grateful for the privilege of existing in my own apartment. The tension in the room was so thick it was hard to breathe. My friend stayed quiet, clearly uncomfortable, and I turned to Ethan, who was sitting on the couch with his phone. "Are you hearing this?" I asked. He looked up, then back down at his screen. "Let's not make this a big deal," he said. "She just wants to be included in decisions." I stared at him. Not once did he correct her. Not once did he stand up for me. I didn't say anything else. My friend and I went into my bedroom, shut the door, and tried to ignore the way my hands were still shaking. Inside, something shifted. I knew I couldn't keep living like this. I knew I couldn't keep letting her walk all over me while Ethan sat on the sideline. I didn't confront her again that day. I didn't scream or demand she leave. I just smiled when she walked past later, because I had already made up my mind. She thought she had control. She thought she had won. I was going to prove her wrong. It was a Friday evening when I came home from running errands. The moment I stepped into the hallway, something felt off. There were cardboard boxes stacked near the door, and as I got closer, I realized they were mine. My jacket was folded on top, my laptop bag balanced on the edge. Even my shoes were neatly lined up, as if someone had prepared them for me to carry away. Linda was standing in the living room, arms crossed, wearing a smug little smile. "Good," she said as if she had been waiting for me. "You're here. We can make this quick." I didn't move. "What's going on?" She tilted her head, her voice syrupy and condescending. "Ethan and I talked, and we both agree. It's time for you to go. You're not family." The words were sharp, like she wanted them to sting. I asked where Ethan was, though I already suspected the answer. "At work," she said casually, like this was the most natural thing in the world. "He left it to me to make sure this is handled. We want you to have a smooth exit." I stood there for a long moment, just looking at her. She must have taken my silence as hesitation because her expression hardened. "If you don't leave now," she said, "I'll call building security." "I don't want to, but I will. We can avoid making a scene if you just cooperate." Something about her tone made me want to laugh. I wasn't afraid of security. I wasn't even angry in that moment. I just felt calm. I knew something she didn't, and that made all the difference. I walked over to the boxes and crouched down, pretending to check what she'd packed. Some of it was in the wrong place, but I didn't bother correcting her. Instead, I started putting the last of my things inside. Books from the coffee table, my favorite blanket from the couch, the mug I used every morning. Linda stood there watching, probably thinking she'd broken me. She even sighed in what she must have thought was sympathy. "This is for the best," she said. "You'll see that once you've had some space to think." I zipped up my suitcase without looking at her. My hands moved steadily, not rushing, not shaking. Inside, I was already picturing the steps I was going to take next. When I picked up the suitcase handle, she followed me to the door like she wanted to make sure I really left. I stopped just before stepping out and looked at her for the first time since I walked in. "All right," I said simply. "If that's how it is." Her smile returned, wide and satisfied. She probably thought she'd gotten the last word, that she'd managed to push me out for good. I didn't bother saying anything else. I let her think she had won. Then I stepped into the hallway, closed the door behind me, and walked away, leaving her in what she believed was her home. She didn't know that every wall, every floor, every corner of that place had been paid for with my money. She didn't know that her little victory was about to vanish just as quickly as it had come. She'd find out soon enough. I rolled my suitcase out of the building and didn't stop walking until I reached the street corner. I didn't want to risk running into anyone in the lobby who might ask questions. I pulled out my phone, opened a hotel app, and booked the first room I could find nearby. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean, and most importantly, it was far away from Linda. When I got to the hotel, I set my suitcase down and sat on the edge of the bed. I let myself take one deep breath, then I reached for the phone on the nightstand. I dialed the landlord's office number from memory. "Hi," I said when the receptionist picked up. "This is MC's name. I'm calling about my apartment on address." There was a short pause, then she replied, "Of course. How can we help you?" "I'd like to end my lease early," I said, keeping my tone calm. She asked why, and I gave a vague answer about personal circumstances. Then I added, "I know there's supposed to be notice, but I'm the only one on the lease. Is there a way to end it in 30 days? There was a rustle of papers on her end before she spoke again. "You are the sole leaseholder, yes. If you give written notice today and settle the final month's rent, we can release the unit at the end of that period." Relief washed over me. "Perfect," I said. "I'll email the notice right now." After we hung up, I opened my laptop and typed the shortest, most polite notice I could. No drama, no details, just the facts. I sent it off and waited for the confirmation email. 10 minutes later, it arrived in my inbox. The lease would end in exactly 30 days. The next step was making sure Linda wouldn't see anything that could tip her off. I went to the bank first thing in the morning and withdrew the final month's rent in cash. I walked it straight to the landlord's office and handed it to them in person. The receptionist gave me a receipt, which I folded and tucked into my wallet. No paper trail she could get her hands on. No emails sent to Ethan. No automatic bank withdrawals she might overhear in conversation. As far as Linda was concerned, life would go on as usual, right up until the moment it didn't. With that part handled, I turned my attention to finding a new place. I didn't want anything too big or expensive, but I wanted it to feel like mine. Somewhere no one could rearrange my things or tell me who could visit. I started scrolling through listings late that night. Most of the options were either too far from work or way over budget, but I didn't mind the search. Every photo I clicked felt like a step toward freedom. I bookmarked a handful of apartments and sent out messages to schedule viewings. The next few days passed quietly. From the hotel, I went to work, checked apartment listings, and kept my plans to myself. I didn't call Ethan, and I didn't answer when his name popped up on my phone. I wanted him and his mother to live in their little bubble for just a bit longer. Every now and then, I'd picture Linda walking through the apartment, acting like the queen of a castle that wasn't her. The thought didn't make me angry anymore. It made me almost look forward to the day she'd find out the truth. I wasn't rushing. I had 30 days, and I was going to use every one of them to make sure my exit and her downfall went exactly the way I wanted. 2 weeks later, I knew the timing was perfect. I had already signed the lease on my new apartment and was just waiting for the last week to run out before moving in. I hadn't been back to the old place since the day Linda kicked me out, but that Saturday, I had a reason to go. Some mail had been delivered there instead of to my hotel, and I needed to pick it up. When I walked into the building, I could hear voices even before I reached the door. Laughter, clinking glasses, and the faint smell of something sweet baking drifted into the hallway. I realized Linda was having people over. When I stepped inside, I almost laughed. She had gone all out. The living room was full of people, the coffee table covered in snacks, wine glasses in every hand. And there was Linda, right in the middle, talking to a group like she was the star of the evening. She was dressed up, smiling big, giving a tour of her apartment. I spotted my mail stacked neatly on the console table. I picked it up and was about to leave when one of the guests, a woman in a red dress, smiled at me. "Oh, you must be Linda's daughter-in-law," she asked politely. I smiled back. Something like that. "I just came by to grab my mail." Then, without even glancing at Linda, I added, "Oh, by the way, the lease ends next week, so you might see a moving truck soon." I said it casually, like I was mentioning the weather, but it was loud enough for more than just her to hear. The woman in red looked surprised. The man standing beside her raised his eyebrow. A few people nearby paused mid-conversation. "What do you mean the lease ends next week?" the woman asked. I shrugged, still calm. "Exactly what it sounds like. I ended it. New tenants move in right after." That's when the room shifted. A few guests turned to look at Linda, curiosity all over their faces. The whispering started almost instantly, small at first, then growing louder. I could see people exchanging looks, clearly putting the pieces together. Linda's smile faltered. She tried to laugh, but it came out forced. That's ridiculous, she said. This is Ethan's place. We're not going anywhere. I finally looked directly at her. It's not Ethan's place, I said. It's mine. And the lease was in my name only. I gave my notice 2 weeks ago. Her eyes widened. She opened her mouth like she was going to say something, but nothing came out. The whispers turned into low murmurs, and I knew the gossip would be all over by the time the night ended. I didn't bother explaining further. I just gave her a small smile, tucked my mail under my arm, and walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard one of the guests ask in a hushed voice, "Wait, so she's been paying for this place the whole time?" Someone else muttered, "I guess so," and then more whispering followed. I didn't need to turn around to know what Linda's face looked like in that moment. Confused, embarrassed, and for the first time, completely unsure of what to say. I let myself out, leaving her in a room full of people who had just learned she'd been pretending to own something she never had any claim to. And the best part was, the night was only going to get worse for her. The very next morning, the landlord showed up at the apartment. I knew he would. Our inspection had been scheduled when I gave my notice. I wasn't there to see it, but I could picture the scene perfectly. Linda probably opened the door with that fake smile she used on strangers, thinking the visit was for some routine maintenance. Instead, she would have been told they were there to do a final walkthrough before the new tenants moved in. It must have hit her then. The murmurs from the party weren't gossip or a bluff. It was real. The place she had been parading as her own was about to belong to someone else. It didn't take long before my phone started lighting up. First, it was Ethan's name on the screen, but I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, it rang again. This time it was Linda. I ignored that too. An hour passed before Ethan finally left a message that was more like a bark. "Why didn't you tell me you ended the lease? What's going on?" His voice was tight, like he was speaking through gritted teeth. I called him back once I'd finished my coffee. "Ask your mother," I said simply, then hung up. I didn't know him more than that. Later, I heard from a mutual friend that Linda had called Ethan in a complete fury after the landlord's visit. She'd been pacing around, shouting about how unfair it was, saying she had nowhere to go, and that I had ruined everything. Apparently, Ethan was shocked to learn my name was the only one on the lease. He'd just assumed it was in his name, or both of ours, and never once asked. He'd been living in my apartment without even realizing it. With only a week left before the lease ended, Linda had to scramble. She started calling everyone she knew, asking for recommendations, begging for short-term rentals, even hinting to some friends that they should let her stay, just until she figured things out. Most of them didn't take her up on it. Her reputation for being controlling wasn't exactly a secret. Meanwhile, I went about my days quietly. I had my new place lined up and my move scheduled. I didn't answer Ethan's texts or Linda's calls. I didn't offer help, and I didn't apologize. This was her problem to solve, and she'd brought it on herself. I imagined her packing her things in a rush, realizing there was no time to be picky about where she'd end up. For someone who had spent months acting like she was queen of the place, being forced out on short notice had to be a hard pill to swallow. By the end of that week, the apartment that had been mine, and mine alone, would be ready for its new tenants. Linda would be gone, Ethan would be shocked, and I would finally be free of both of them. Moving into my new apartment felt like stepping into a clean page of a notebook. There were no traces of Linda's furniture, no scent of her perfume, no rules taped to the fridge. The walls were bare at first, but that only made me more excited. I spent the first few days unpacking slowly, choosing where every single thing should go. The couch faced the window so I could watch the street below. My desk sat by the balcony door for the sunlight. Everything was exactly the way I wanted it. I bought a new set of dishes, soft rugs, and a bright quilt for my bed. For the first time in months, I could make coffee without hearing someone comment on it. I could watch TV late at night without worrying about a complaint. The space felt like mine, not because I paid for it, but because it was finally free of anyone who thought they owned me. It didn't take long for Ethan to reach out. First it was a short text, "We need to talk." Then a longer one, "I miss you. Please come back so we can figure this out." I ignored them at first, but after a week he called. He sounded tired, like the last couple of weeks had worn him down. "I made a mistake," he said. "We can start over. Just come home." "There's nothing to start over," I told him. "I'm not going to live with someone who doesn't have my back. Not again." He tried to explain himself, saying he didn't think things were that bad, that he thought staying out of it was the best way to keep the peace. I told him keeping the peace for him meant making me miserable, and that was the end of the conversation. I heard later from a friend that Linda had found a small one-bedroom far outside the city. It was nothing like the apartment she'd claimed as her own. Old carpet, small windows, and a long bus ride to anywhere she needed to go. Apparently, she complained about it to anyone who would listen, but there wasn't much sympathy left for her. Ethan still visited her, but it wasn't the same. The tension between them was obvious, according to people who saw them together. I imagined their conversations, how they probably avoided talking about me because it only led to arguments. In my own life, the quiet was enough. I didn't need updates on them, and I didn't spend my time wondering what they were doing. I had my own place, my own space, and no one to tell me how I should live in it. That was all I wanted. A few months later, life felt calm and steady. I didn't hear from Ethan or Linda anymore, and that was exactly how I wanted it. No calls, no messages, no drama. One afternoon, I was scrolling on my phone when a Facebook notification popped up. "You have a memory to look back on," it said. Curious, I tapped it. It was a post from that day, the day Linda told me to leave. The picture showed my suitcase sitting by the door, the edge of the hallway behind it. Back then, I'd been holding back a storm of emotions, but I'd captioned it with a line that still made me proud. When someone thinks they can evict you from the home you pay for, let them try. Reading it now made me smirk. It wasn't the tight, forced smile I'd worn that day. It was real. The kind that comes when you know you didn't just walk away. You walked away on your own terms. I scrolled through some of the old comments, friends asking what happened, others telling me I was strong. I didn't reply to any of them now. Instead, I tapped into the settings, searched for Linda's name, and hit block. I did the same for Ethan. No chances for either of them to pop back into my life. When I set my phone down, I realized there wasn't any anger left. No resentment, just a quiet satisfaction. They could live however they wanted, wherever they wanted. It wasn't my concern anymore. The room was still, the air light. I took a long breath and let it out slowly. That chapter was done, completely closed. Do you think Ethan made the right choice by staying silent and letting things fall apart? Or should he have stood up and tried to fix his family before it was too late? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd really like to hear your opinion. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next one.